Welcome by the podcast about MBT group session.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I want you to imagine feeling a 9 out of 10, like, truly explosive room clearing rage just because a receptionist asked you to sit in a different chair.
Right. It sounds completely irrational on the surface.
Yeah, I mean, your blood is boiling, your heart rate is just spiking, you feel utterly dehumanized, and today we have our hands on a really rare, unedited transcript of a live mentalization-based treatment group.
Which is such an incredible resource to have.
It really is. And we are going to break down the exact moments the human mind turns, mundane rules into literal matters of psychological life and death.
Yeah, it is a profound privilege to be able to look at this material.
Yeah.
We are essentially lifting the hood on human consciousness today.
Exactly.
Because you just described that totally disproportionate, terrifying rage over a waiting room chair. That is exactly what you're going to unpack.
And we aren't just going to look at what happened, right? Like the surface level drama.
No, not at all. We are going to look at the mechanical breakdown of the self-other boundary that actually causes it.
And that is the mission of our deep dive today. So if you are listening to this, you likely already know that mentalizing isn't just being empathetic.
Right. It's way more complex than that.
Yeah, it's this incredibly fragile cognitive and emotional framework that allows us to, understand our own minds and imagine the inner worlds of others.
It's the core of how we relate to the world.
I always think of it as having subtitles for human behavior.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah, like when the system is online, you can read the hidden meaning. You can say, my boss is snapping at me because she's terrified of the board meeting, right? Not because my work is terrible.
Exactly. You can see the motivation beneath the action.
But when the system crashes, like when we get triggered, those subtitles just completely vanish.
They vanish entirely. And we are left reacting blindly to the surface level noise.
Which is terrifying.
It is. And in an MBT group, the objective is to catch those exact moments of system failure live, right there in the room, and manually reboot the software.
So it's not just sitting in a circle and swapping trauma narratives.
Not at all.
Huh.
It is a live psychological laboratory where the participants' defense mechanisms just physically collide in real time.
Right. And reading the transcript of this session, I mean, that collision is spectacular.
It really is.
But what genuinely surprised me was how the session actually started.
The opening is fascinating, yeah.
Right, because knowing we were heading toward discussions of profound grief and explosive rage, I totally expected a very heavy, clinical opening.
You expect everyone to walk in looking somber.
Exactly. But the baseline of the session is jarringly mundane.
It really is just everyday chatter.
Yeah, it starts with one of the group members literally trying to draw a duck foot on a whiteboard. They are legitimately debating the anatomy of a duck. And then the primary therapist makes some highly practical announcements. She's going to be absent next week. Another therapist is filling in. There's a holiday break coming up.
Just completely logistical stuff.
Yeah, and another participant is complaining about traffic on the highway. And I have to admit, reading this, my first thought was, are they wasting time?
Right. Where is the therapy?
Yeah, what is the actual clinical value of complaining about traffic?
Well, it's a very common reaction to look at that small talk and dismiss it.
Oh.
But if we view this through the lens of nervous system regulation,
Okay.
this casual preamble is an absolute necessity.
Really? Why?
Because stepping into a room with 6 or 7 other people who are all carrying intense, volatile psychological pain is incredibly dysregulating.
Right, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. If the therapist were to immediately demand deep emotional vulnerability the second people sat down, the participants' threat detection systems would just skyrocket.
They'd panic.
They would go straight into fight, flight, or freeze before the work even began.
So drawing a duck foot is essentially like a parasympathetic hack.
That is exactly what it is. It engages the procedural, mundane parts of the brain.
Wow.
It establishes a baseline of physical and psychological safety. I mean, think of it as the equivalent of checking the atmospheric pressure before opening an airlock.
Okay, I really like that. They are basically proving to their own nervous systems that they are in a safe, shared physical reality before they dive into the abstract, terrifying world of their internal traumas.
Precisely. They are tuning their instruments.
Okay, I see the utility in that now. But man, the whiplash is intense.
It is a very sharp turn.
Because the shift from that safe, grounded baseline to the first major emotional weight being dropped into the center of the room happens so fast.
It really does.
We transition from duck feet and highway traffic to a female participant opening up about a staggering, life-altering loss.
It's a profound moment of vulnerability in the group. She shares the story of her infant daughter who died 23 years ago.
And the details here are just devastating. She had twins, a boy and a girl,
Right.
and the little girl passed away shortly before birth.
Yeah.
Which means for 23 years, every single time she celebrates her surviving son's birthday, she is simultaneously carrying the anniversary of her daughter's death.
The timeline alone is just staggering.
It really is. And she mentions that the past few weeks have been exceptionally brutal because her son was getting his diploma.
He's hitting those major life milestones.
Exactly. He is stepping into full adulthood, and she is left staring into the void of who her daughter would have been at 23.
The temporal weight of that grief is immense. But what we really need to focus on, functionally, is how she processed this grief over those 2 decades.
Or how she didn't process it.
More accurately, yes, how she was structurally prevented from processing it. She reveals that she spent years entirely repressing this pain.
Yeah.
She pushed it down because she operated under the terrifying belief that if she allowed herself to mourn the child she lost, she would somehow infect or damage the child who lived.
Which brings us to the part of the transcript that made my blood legitimately boil.
Oh, the invalidation.
Yes, because it's one thing to have an internal fear of burdening your child. It's a completely different thing for your environment to actively weaponize that fear against you.
It's horrific.
She shares that her ex-partner, the father of these children, literally told her at the time, quote, "You're still pregnant, so what are you complaining about?"
Yeah.
He explicitly told her to shut up and focus on the surviving twin. And it didn't even stop there.
It was systemic.
Her extended family, people she worked with at the same company, they all made it clear that she was not allowed to speak about the dead child. They silenced her completely.
That is the textbook definition of severe environmental invalidation.
It's just cruel.
It is. And we know from trauma research that the psychological damage is rarely just the tragic event itself. The lasting trauma is cemented by the absence of an empathetic witness after the event.
Oh, wow. So because nobody was there to witness the pain becomes toxic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When her ex-partner says, "You're still pregnant, what are you complaining about?" he isn't just being insensitive. He is launching an epistemological attack on her reality.
An epistemological attack. I mean, that makes so much sense.
He is telling her that her internal state is fundamentally wrong, defective, and a threat to the environment.
So she internalizes that.
Completely.
She learns that her grief is essentially toxic waste, and her only job in life is to keep it contained so it doesn't spill on anyone else.
Yes.
She literally uses the word invisible in the transcript. She felt she had to become invisible to avoid criticism.
Right.
Fast forward 23 years, and she finally brings this invisible, suffocating weight into the group. She lays this heavy, painful reality on the floor.
And that takes immense courage.
It does. Now, if I'm in that room, my instinct is to immediately comfort her, to say, that is horrific. I am so sorry.
That's the natural human response.
But the primary therapist does something that felt almost clinical.
Okay, how so?
She slows the participant down and asks a very specific question. She says, "What do you want to get out of sharing this today? Where can the others think along with you?"
It feels clinical, perhaps even slightly disruptive, but I promise you it is a masterstroke of MBT technique.
I have to push back on that, though.
Go for it.
If someone has been silenced for 23 years, isn't interrupting their story to ask, "What do you want today?" Just like another form of silencing. Doesn't it feel dismissive of all that historical pain?
I completely understand why it reads that way to you.
Yeah.
Let's look at the mechanics of what happens when a patient recites a decades-old trauma narrative.
Oh, okay.
Often they slip into a dissociated passive state. They aren't really in the room
No,
anymore.
you're just replaying a tape.
Exactly. They are back in the past, re-experiencing the helplessness. So by asking, "What do you want to get out of sharing this today?" the therapist is throwing down a temporal anchor.
Oh, I see.
She is shifting the participant from being a passive victim of her history into an active agent in the present moment.
Right.
It demands that the mother activate her mentalizing capacity regarding her immediate relational needs right now with these specific people sitting around her.
So it stops the monologue and forces a dialogue.
Precisely.
It's not about ignoring the past at all. It's about examining how the ghosts of the past are operating in the room right now.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And the therapist expertly points out that the mother is terrified of burdening the group, just like she was terrified of burdening her son and her ex-partner.
She assumes the group will reject her.
She is using the exact same defense mechanism mind reading.
Which is so common.
And you, listening to this, have probably done this exact thing. You draft an entire argument in your head with your partner or your boss before you even step into the room, assuming you know exactly how they'll react.
Oh, everyone does it.
Yeah, and then you alter your behavior based on a literal hallucination. The mother is writing the subtitles for the group, assuming they will be crushed or annoyed by her sadness.
Mind reading is the ultimate collapse of the self-other boundary.
How so?
Well, you project your own fears onto the other person,
Yeah.
and then you react as if your projection is an objective fact.
Great. You don't even give them a chance to respond.
Exactly. But the beauty of the group setting is that it provides immediate reality testing.
Which individual therapy can't always do.
Right. The therapist doesn't just say, "You're wrong, your son wouldn't mind," because that's just an intellectual debate.
Yeah, that doesn't change the feeling.
Instead, the therapist uses the group as a live mirror. The group gets the opportunity to prove to her, live and in person, that her assumption is a complete fiction.
And the group absolutely delivers.
They really step up.
But it's not the soft tissue-handing support you might expect from, like, a movie version of therapy. It's actually quite sharp.
It is. It's challenging.
Another participant, a male group member, steps in, and he shares his own background with grief and parenting. And he essentially confronts her.
He challenges this entire architecture of withdrawal she's built.
Yeah. He tells her that by hiding her true self from her surviving son, by trying to protect him from her grief, she is actually abandoning him to fill in the blanks with his own anxieties.
Which is a brilliant psychological insight from a peer.
It totally is.
Children are profound emotional barometers. They feel the atmospheric pressure of a parent's suppressed grief, even if the parent never utters a single word about it.
They just know something is wrong.
They absolutely know.
Yeah.
And if the parent refuses to provide the narrative, if they hide the subtitles, as you said earlier, the child's brain will inevitably invent its own.
And that's usually bad news.
Almost universally, a child's invented narrative defaults to, "I am the problem. It is my fault." This male participant is mentalizing the son's experience for the mother. He is shining a light on her blind spot, showing her that her noble silence is likely causing the exact relational damage she sacrificed her own well-being to avoid.
And to really drive this home, he shares an incredibly moving anecdote about his own life.
I loved this part.
Me too. He talks about how he recently opened up to his 3 sons about his own mental health struggles and the really hard work he's doing at the clinic.
Yeah.
And he describes a moment when his son was driving past the therapy center and actually texted him a photo of the building.
Such a simple gesture, but so powerful.
It really is. The son was proud. He was saying, I see where you're doing your hard work, Dad. The father tells the group that if he had kept everything a secret, his sons would just be left guessing why their dad is distant, tense, or sad.
Right.
By sharing the reality, he created a bridge.
That anecdote is vital because it moves the confrontation from theory to hard evidence. He is modeling what it looks like to trust another human being's capacity to handle your truth. And he doesn't let her off the hook either.
Oh, not at all.
He points out a glaring pattern in her behavior right there in the room. He says to her, "Over whatever person we talk about, you find an excuse for every single person as to why you can't discuss your feelings with them."
It's so direct.
That is a direct, piercing challenge to her failed mentalization.
He's basically saying, your math is wrong. You've calculated that you are a burden to everyone, and you're rigging the data to support that conclusion.
Exactly.
He tells her that while her children are undeniably important, she is important too. He says, quote, "I didn't know that either, but I found out. I am also important, and I am allowed to let people know how I feel."
That peer-to-peer intervention hits so much harder than if the therapist had said it.
It really does. But the therapist's role here is to, catch the pass and score the point, right?
Yes, to synthesize it.
Because the therapist steps in immediately after this exchange to highlight the high price the mother is paying for her protective invisibility.
Right.
The therapist says, you keep it all to yourself. And because of that, you feel intensely lonely and misunderstood all the time.
She calls out the defense mechanism perfectly. She says, "You have an endless defense mechanism that will invent infinite arguments as to why it's best to stay exactly where you are."
Wow.
By letting the group push back, the therapist proves to the mother that her internal operating system is outdated.
Yeah, she needs a software update.
Exactly. The group is listening to her, challenging her, holding space for her, and nobody has collapsed. They are proving, through action, that she is not toxic.
It's a beautiful moment of therapeutic leverage. The mother is brought face to face with the reality that her lifelong safety strategy is actually the architect of her profound isolation.
It's a huge realization.
But therapy is rarely a smooth, linear ascent.
Definitely not.
Just as the room settles into this deeply resonant, empathetic frequency regarding grief, the entire atmosphere of the session is fractured.
Fractured is exactly the right word for it.
Because we go from a woman overflowing with decades of suppressed, agonizing emotion to another participant who experiences the exact polar opposite.
A staggering, total emotional void.
Yes. The primary therapist does what good group leaders do. She checks the pulse of the room. She asks how this heavy discussion about grief is landing with everyone else.
Standard check-in.
Right. And another male participant responds with something that completely derailed my expectations.
What does he say?
He says, I have no idea what grief entails. I really have no idea what that concept is.
The total record scratch moment.
Yeah. And he elaborates on this, and it is fascinating. He explains that when his friends experience terrible losses, he plays the role of what he dubs the world's social scripter.
The social scripter.
He says he can sit with a grieving friend for 6 hours straight. He can listen, he can nod, he can fetch tea. He performs the exact choreography of a supportive friend flawlessly.
Externally, he's doing everything right.
Exactly. But internally, he admits it's like a barren wasteland. Nothing goes off inside him. He feels absolutely zero resonance with their pain. He views friendship as merely a role to play, a procedural script to execute.
So to understand what is happening here, we have to look at the mechanics of empathy.
Okay, break that down for us.
Because this is not psychopathy, it's not malice.
Mm-hmm.
What we are seeing is a radical severing of cognitive empathy from effective empathy.
What's the difference?
Cognitive empathy is the intellectual understanding of another's state.
Mm-hmm.
He has that in spades. He knows the script perfectly. He knows what to do when someone cries.
Right, fetch the tea.
Exactly. But effective empathy, that's the neurological mirroring where you actually feel a shadow of the other person's emotion. That is completely disconnected for him.
Okay, so if we think about the brain as like a manual transmission car,
Yeah.
his cognitive empathy is the engine, and it's revving at 8,000 RPMs.
Yes.
He is processing the data, but the effective empathy is the clutch, and it is completely severed. The engine is roaring, but the transmission isn't connecting to the wheels. He isn't moving.
That's a great analogy.
But I have to ask, is this necessarily a pathology?
That's a very fair question.
Because some people are just highly systemizing or perhaps neurodivergent. Why does MBT view this hyper-rational scripter role as a defense mechanism rather than just, a different operating system?
That is a crucial distinction to make. In MBT, we don't pathologize difference.
Yeah.
We look for rigidity and suffering.
Okay.
The clue that this is a defense mechanism rather than just a neurocognitive baseline is the absolute impermeable nature of the void and the deep isolation it causes him.
So it's about how stuck he is.
Exactly. Hypermentalizing, where you analyze everything to death but feel nothing, is a highly sophisticated fortress. It's a wall built to keep overwhelming effect out.
Oh, I see. He isn't lacking the capacity for emotion. He is terrified of the unpredictability of emotion. Logic is safe. A script is predictable. Raw grief is chaotic. So his system shuts down the effective feed to protect the core.
And you can see the toll that takes on his relationships instantly within the group.
It creates immediate friction.
The first male participant, the father who just gave that beautiful speech about connecting with his sons, is utterly baffled by this void.
He can't comprehend it.
The cognitive dissonance for him is palpable.
Mm.
He presses the disconnected participant. He asks, you don't feel it. You play that you are there for him, but you don't feel it.
Yeah.
And when the guy confirms it, the first man asks the most fundamental question. Then why are they your friends? Why is someone your friend if you don't feel a connection?
The tension in that exchange is remarkable. You have two human beings operating on entirely different definitional frameworks of what connection even means.
Right, they're speaking different languages. The first man defines connection through shared vulnerability and emotional resonance. The disconnected man defines connection through proximity, shared history, and role fulfillment.
Yeah, when pressed on why someone is his friend, he can only offer transactional, logistical reasons. He cannot locate the emotional core of the relationship.
And the first participant says, It amazes me. I'm just curious, how is your connection and friendship? I have a feeling with friends, otherwise the whole world could be my friend.
It's such a sharp observation.
It really is.
Because if friendship is just executing a script, why this person and not a stranger? The group is speaking the messy, fluid language of emotion, and this participant is stubbornly reading from a technical manual.
Exactly. They're trying to reach him, but there is no port to plug into.
And for the therapist, this presents a monumental challenge. I mean, how do you treat a void?
It's incredibly difficult.
You cannot simply instruct a patient to feel more. That's like telling someone to just grow taller.
Right. You can't prescribe emotion. You have to locate the threat.
What do you mean?
You have to figure out what the hyper-rational fortress is protecting against. You have to find the crack in the wall.
And, oh boy, do we find the crack.
We certainly do.
We get to see exactly what happens when that fortress is breached. And this brings us to what might be the most fascinating sequence in the entire transcript.
That's brilliant.
I call it the waiting room incident.
Yes.
Because how does a man who claims to feel absolutely nothing when his best friend is drowning in grief suddenly experience intense, blinding emotion? The transcript shifts to a logistical issue that triggers a reaction so disproportionate it practically vibrates off the page.
This is a masterclass in how trauma disguises itself in the mundane. The trigger is rarely the thing we expect.
So, the disconnected male participant shares a story from earlier in the week.
Sure.
He arrived at the clinic for his individual therapy session, and he usually waits in an upstairs waiting area. But on this day, the clinic staff asked him to wait downstairs with the other patients.
That's it. That's the whole event.
That is the entirety of the inciting incident. Please sit in a different chair downstairs. And his reaction, he tells the group he felt a 9 out of 10 anger.
A 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
I mean, on a clinical scale, a 9 is essentially a state of emergency. It is an overwhelming, system-flooding rage over a chair.
Yes. He uses the word cattle. He felt treated like livestock.
Wow.
He was absolutely infuriated that he was forced to adapt to someone else's incompetence without them taking responsibility. He launches into this hyper-logical, incredibly rigid spiral about how there are distinct spatial zones, how the staff is failing at basic procedural protocols, how he shouldn't have to bear the brunt of their organizational failures.
Intellectualizing the rage.
The irony is just staggering. The man who feels zero effective empathy for a grieving friend feels a 9 out of 10 rage because he had to walk down a flight of stairs.
Now look at how the second therapist, Janine, navigates this minefield. A poorly trained therapist might argue with him about the clinic's policy.
Right, like, sir, it's just a chair.
Or tell him he's overreacting. But Janine doesn't do that. She validates that his anger is vastly disproportional to the objective event, which his hyper-rational brain actually agrees with.
Oh, that's smart.
She asks him to explore why the emotional payload of that specific request was so massive. And this is where we decode the trigger.
Okay, what is it?
The anger isn't about the spatial zones of the clinic. The anger is about the violation of boundaries, the loss of autonomy, and historical trauma.
Exactly. He starts connecting the dots right there in the group. He admits this is a lifelong pattern. He mentions experiencing this exact same physical sensation of rage at every school he's ever attended, every place he's ever worked.
Pervasive.
It's this deep-seated, agonizing feeling of being forced to bend to arbitrary authority, of having his own needs and boundaries dismissed as completely unimportant while he is forced to accommodate the incompetence of others.
He feels entirely subjugated.
He says it feels like being made a victim so other people can solve their own problems. Quote, as if I have to take other people into account without them having to take me into account.
What we are witnessing is an emotional flashback.
Really? Just from the waiting room change?
Yes. When the receptionist asked him to move downstairs, his brain didn't see a receptionist managing a busy clinic. In a fraction of a second, that receptionist became an amalgamation of every authority figure who had ever made him feel small, unseen, and forced into compliance.
Oh, wow.
His amygdala sounded a 5-alarm fire. And his reaction, arguing vehemently about the logistics of the waiting room zones, is his desperate attempt to regain control through logic when he feels emotionally annihilated.
It is a stunning display of how the past just completely colonizes the present.
It really is.
And the primary therapist catches a massive contradiction in how he operates. She points out that in the group, he frequently fuses with other people's anger. Like, if someone else in the group is wronged, he gets passionately, vehemently angry on their behalf. But when he is wronged, he completely intellectualizes it. He turns into a robot.
Yeah.
He argues protocols instead of saying, I feel hurt.
By pointing out this contradiction, the therapists keep the entire group anchored in a mentalizing stance.
How so?
Well, they prevent the participants from getting sucked into a pointless debate about whether the clinic's waiting room policy is fair or flawed.
Which would be so easy to do.
Oh, it's a huge trap. Instead, they keep the spotlight relentlessly focused on the internal mechanism. Why did your system overdrive? Why are you allowed to feel anger for others, but you force yourself to use logic for yourself?
Yeah.
They are analyzing the software glitch, not the monitor.
It feels like they are right on the precipice of a major breakthrough with him. He is finally looking at this lifelong pattern of subjugation. The tension is incredibly high.
Very high.
And then the dynamic shifts violently.
Of course it does.
Another group member unconsciously decides that the emotional pressure cooker is just too hot and she blows the valve. We get to see defense mechanisms erupt in real time.
When the heat gets too high, the system demands an exit.
And the exit comes from the mother,
Yeah.
the same woman who started the session discussing her deceased twin daughter.
Right.
Right when the therapist is probing the disconnected man's robot-like defense, the mother suddenly interrupts with a barrage of rapid-fire logistical questions about the waiting room rule.
Completely out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere, she wants to know, why was the rule changed? Does it apply to everyone? I was the first one here today. Does it apply to me too? Who made the decision? Why weren't we informed via email?
This is a textbook shift in mode.
Shift in mode.
Yes. The emotional intensity of the room was escalating rapidly.
Hmm.
We had moved from her profound grief into the void and now into the volatile territory of historical trauma and powerlessness.
It's a lot to handle.
It is. Her capacity to mentalize the raw emotion of that moment simply collapsed. And when mentalization drops, we often retreat into hyperrationality. We seek facts, rules, and procedures because they are static. They are controllable. They don't require us to feel the messy, terrifying vulnerability of human connection.
The primary therapist, Anouk, spots the deflection instantly. She steps in, noticing the entire atmosphere of the room has morphed from deep psychological exploration into, like, a customer service complaint desk.
Right, which is not therapeutic.
And she completely ignores the logistical questions about the waiting room. Instead, she gently points out the function of the interruption. She asks the mother, "Do you realize what is happening now? How this interaction is going between you and the group? How does that feel for you?"
And the mother's reaction is immediate defensiveness.
She feels deeply attacked. She says she feels misunderstood, that the therapist doesn't believe her and is looking down on her.
Yes.
She says, quote, "It feels like you're standing opposite me, looking down on me." She insists she isn't deflecting at all. She's just genuinely curious about the new rules.
She believes that.
She describes her brain as a pinball machine of questions and claims that if she can just get the concrete answers, her anxiety will settle.
We have arrived at the ultimate therapeutic impasse.
What do you mean?
The patient is aggressively insisting that the core issue is a practical rule. But the therapist knows the core issue is emotional avoidance. The mother is using clarity as a shield.
Oh, I see.
If she can keep the therapist busy answering trivia about clinic policies, she doesn't have to sit with the echoes of her own grief or the unpredictable anger of her peer. Fact-finding is her armor.
Okay, but I have a serious question about this interaction, though.
Sure.
Because reading it, it feels like a trap for the patient.
That's so.
If she stays silent, she's quote-unquote withdrawing. If she asks a question, it's a defense mechanism. Isn't the therapist being a bit evasive by refusing to just answer the question? How does the therapist navigate this without gaslighting the patient into thinking her genuine curiosity is actually a pathology?
That is the tightrope of MBT, and it's a brilliant question.
It just feels unfair to her.
Well, if the therapist simply answers the waiting room questions, the therapy fails because she colludes with the defense mechanism. They end up talking about administrative policy instead of psychology.
Okay, fair.
But if the therapist pushes too hard and says, "You're just avoiding your feelings," the patient will feel invalidated and shut down completely. The way through the impasse is curiosity.
Show me how that works practically. What does the therapist actually say?
The therapist doesn't argue the facts. She doesn't dispute the mother's claim that she wants clarity. Instead, both therapists model genuine curiosity about the feeling of being judged.
Oh, focusing on the emotion behind the accusation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They ask, what in my question made it feel like I was looking down on you? They validate the mother's subjective experience of feeling attacked without endorsing her interpretation that an attack actually occurred. They slow the pinball machine down.
Yes. Because the second therapist, Janine, asks a pivotal question. She says, "What is the function of all these questions you are asking? What does it bring you?"
And that's when the shift happens.
Finally, the mother admits it. She says, clarity. But then she keeps talking, and the truth slips out. She admits that asking questions keeps her, quote, comfortable.
Comfortable.
She says, we always had to be in resistance. I was just nice and comfortable. Nice, isn't it?
That is the breakthrough right there.
Wow.
By exploring the need for the questions rather than the content of the questions, the therapist helped the mother step outside of her own mind and observe it.
She sees the pattern.
She realizes that her barrage of whys about a mundane rule is actually an ancient survival tactic. It keeps her engaged in a superficial battle of resistance, which feels familiar and safe, protecting her from the terrifying vulnerability of the present moment.
And the cherry on top is when the other male participant, the one who confronted her about her grief earlier, he jumps back in.
Yes.
He hears her say she just wants to be comfortable, and he says, I don't think we are here to be comfortable.
It is an incredible full circle moment.
It totally is. The group itself is maintaining the therapeutic boundary. They are refusing to let her hide behind clinic policies. They are pulling her back into the deep water.
It perfectly encapsulates the arc of a single MBT session. We transition from the grounding safety of drawing a duck foot, plunged into the terrifying depths of a 23-year-old grief, navigated the sterile, hyper-rational void of emotional disconnection, survived the fiery eruption of historical trauma triggered by a chair,
Right.
and finally witnessed a live, messy collision between a patient desperately trying to hide and a group refusing to let her disappear.
It is absolutely breathtaking. It proves that in our daily lives, every single interaction, every annoyed sigh, every seemingly innocent question about a new protocol at work is dripping with psychological significance.
It's all beta.
It's all a window into the desperate, beautiful ways human beings try to navigate the terrifying landscape of connection.
And the ultimate takeaway is that healing does not happen in a vacuum. You cannot fix your relational trauma alone in your bedroom.
Yeah, that's so true.
It happens in the messy, imperfect, challenging space between people. It happens when we are brave enough to let the rigid subtitles vanish, endure the terror of confusion, and work with others to write a new narrative.
That is exactly right. So as we wrap up our discussion today, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Think about the last time you found yourself obsessing over a minor logistical rule at work.
Or the last time you initiated a massive argument with your partner about exactly how the dishwasher is loaded. Or when you asked endless rapid-fire why questions about a mundane change in plans.
What if that intense irritation had absolutely nothing to do with the rule or the dishes or the plans?
Exactly. What if it was actually your mind's highly sophisticated way of protecting you from a much deeper, unacknowledged emotional vulnerability? What are you protecting yourself from? Thank you for listening to this group session episode of the MBT podcast. Don't forget to follow us to stay updated on new episodes where we continue to explore what it means to mentalize within yourself, in relationships, and within the group.